Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Caleb?
Here. All righty. Now we can have the first of our two presentations. First one is about vinyl chloride. So we're going to ask our city manager office intern, Ashley Latz, to come and tell us what she's found out about our vinyl chloride plumes. Or plume or blooms.
Good afternoon. I believe I've met all of you officially, but like you said, I'm the intern.
Pull the microphone up closer. Nobody can hear you.
Is it on? Okay. I'm here to update you today with some information regarding a project I've been working on concerning issues of groundwater contamination that the city is currently facing. You want to go to the next one? Currently within the city, there are 2 properties that pose a potential risk to the health of residents. Those sites being the Ottawa Steel site and the Dake site. Due to mishandling of old industrial products, large areas inside and outside of those properties have experienced compromised groundwater. The DEQ has spent several years investigating these sites and conducting groundwater testing, and they have identified high levels of a contaminant that is specifically known as vinyl chloride, which is a known carcinogen, meaning it has the potential to cause cancer. This is obviously a concern for us in the DEQ, but it should be noted that residents don't have to be too concerned as their drinking water is serviced through municipal water. So that's an important clarification that I should make. The concern lies within irrigation systems, hoses, sprinklers, that residents could be bringing the contaminant up to the surface, where that would then create the harmful exposure. It's also important to note that vinyl chloride is a long-lasting compound, meaning that it doesn't break down adequately over time. So for that reason, the Department of Environmental Quality has advised that we consider adding these 2 groundwater contamination plumes to our restricted groundwater zone ordinance. First property is probably familiar to some of you, as it has been frequently revisited by the Department of Environmental Quality. Beginning in 1997 is when they began testing the site for the contaminants, and they revisited in 1999, 2002, as well as 2015. They also intend to test it once again next month, but as I mentioned, it is a slow changing compound, so they don't expect to see any kind of changes in the levels. The issue with this site is that there is no proven liable party, meaning the Department of Environmental Quality can't force anyone to address this issue. Oops. So they are requesting that the city act as the applicant per our ordinance, meaning per our ordinance, the applicant would be required to provide the service of plugging the wells at no cost to the property owner. So if we choose to act as the applicant, we would then be liable for the cost of plugging the wells. And after compiling a list of state, county, and records we have at the city, which is a dated list and not a very comprehensive list, we have a rough estimate of around 60 wells within this zone that could potentially be what we are liable for, which would be a rough estimate of around $9,000. But as I mentioned, this is not a comprehensive or ideal list. A survey would need to be conducted to have a more reflective list of potential well properties to have a more accurate potential expense. An important note. If we were to pursue it this fiscal year, the funding would have to come from the general fund reserve, as all other funds are accounted for. On the other hand, The other site is the Dake Property. They have been testing this property annually. They have the same contaminant, again, a slow changing one that they expect to not reach any kind of safe level within any near future. However, since the processes are the same for the application process for a restricted groundwater zone, they are seeking to join the process if we decide to further pursue the Ottawa Steel site as the applicant. However, they would act as the applicant for the Dake property, rendering them the liable party and responsible for any costs associated with the application process. So any correspondences about that contaminated site would go out on their letterhead, and the cost of plugging the wells would be at their expense. They just simply would like to be considered if we pursue this further for ease of process. The Department of Environmental Quality has made it clear that there are not any adequate funds to pursue this on their end or to assist us in the process. They don't foresee any future, they don't have any confidence in any future funding possibilities for this either. So with lack of confidence in the future funding capabilities of the state, and in the interest of acting in the best interest of public health, I think it would be appropriate for the city to consider moving forward with the proposed restricted zones. With that being said, the next steps for the city would be to conduct a survey of the property owners within the Ottawa Steel site plume zone in order to get a more accurate estimate of how many wells might be found within that area that we would be liable if we chose to take on this task. Hopefully that was a lot of information to try to remember all in one setting. So if there are any questions or clarification I can offer.
So we currently have two restricted zones in the city, both on the north end, one at the side of Grand Landing, and the other over toward the old industrial area by the tannery.
Yes.
And this site's been known to us. It got on my radar in 2002, about the time I was on the Environmental Committee, and it was widely publicized at the time, and I guess we never took action on it. I guess one of my questions is, the two sites that we did place groundwater restrictions on, did we have to plug wells there, or have the laws changed since then?
We have not been held responsible or had to pay for either one. I think in both those cases we had a identified party. I don't know who the one was on the east side there. Was it Engine Power Components?
I don't know.
The Grand Landing one, same thing, but we have not had to follow up and do any well camping or reconnecting anybody. And that's one thing I did want to point out, that on top of having to cap wells, we also may need to connect some of these irrigation systems to city water, and potentially be responsible for that cost as well, if we're the applicant.
So, but back to the question on the original two, which are currently under ordinance, that didn't cost us any money because we identified parties?
Correct. I don't believe there, and I don't know if the identified parties had to pay for anything either. You know, it's a matter of passing an ordinance that says you can no longer extract groundwater in these areas. You know, it's a local law that you can't extract groundwater, no new wells.
But as I'm reading the information in our packet, it says that if the city takes such action and can't identify a responsible party, then the city has to be the responsible party and cap all these? And that doesn't sound like what we did before when we created our groundwater withdrawal ordinance. I don't recall any such expenses or identifying parties.
It's
So
more
have the rules changed since then?
It's if we choose to act as the applicant. We are not obligated to act as the applicant. The DEQ is requesting we do so because they cannot prove any party liable. So with those other instances, they had a liable party in which would be responsible for all costs involved, and that may have included some state monies at the time, but now there are currently, the funds are dried up, so the state, since this has been such a long-standing issue, is asking us to take action. So if we choose, and we're not required to act as the applicant, then we would be responsible. We would be taking on that responsibility.
But we didn't do that with the previous two sites. So either we found a responsible party or we just didn't do that.
Yeah, or the state had funds available.
Or maybe
and I
we
don't
just
think we
declared
were-
it a restricted zone and didn't do anything about capping wells.
Correct.
Can we do that? Can we just simply say it's a restricted zone, then not take ownership of these wells and connections? Or is this, reading the provisions that you've got here, have we locked ourselves into having to do that?
If we act as the applicant, we would lock ourselves into doing such.
If we didn't act as an applicant and just simply declared a restricted zone, what would be the effect of that?
Our ordinance requires an applicant in the process.
Okay, because I don't recall this process happening previously when we did this, and I do recall a great deal about the Ottawa Steel site, and I was a little disappointed and surprised that we never took action on that either.
Right.
And then the Dake site, that's been well known, and in fact, if you're interested. A lot of contaminated sites. This comes from DEQ, and it's upside down. There you go.
Lake Huron? No.
Yeah. There's a lot of contaminated sites here, and if we started taking action on some, why would we not take broader action? Unless it's just because it breaks the bank. But I mean, this is the DEQ map of known contaminated sites in city of Grand Haven, Spring Lake, Ferrysburg, and so on. Because like any older industrial city, there's a lot of this out there. Vinyl chloride is kind of pervasive, and it lies in the aquifer and goes fairly dormant and slowly leaches toward the river, but doesn't move fast. But when we've discussed restricted zones before for groundwater withdrawal, we've noted that withdrawing the water stirs the aquifer. It changes the direction of flow. Properties which didn't have contamination become contaminated because the groundwater doesn't care where your property line is. It just flows where the hydraulics makes it go.
Right. And I think to clarify, the DEQ is specifically asking us in this case because it is such a large area, and
So the push is coming from DEQ and not just from the recognition that we have numerous contaminated sites around town.
yes,
They've taken a particular interest in vinyl chloride.
yeah, and this specific, since there is no liable
Why do you
party.
suppose it came up now as opposed to all the years since 2002?
Because we started asking questions.
I suppose it's probably recent events in the news that have raised more of a concern with water safety and quality.
Well, this vinyl chloride and PFAS contaminants are very different things.
Right,
We've also got old landfills around town, which who knows what's in them.
right, and I can't speculate much other than that it's a large site and it's a known carcinogen, and they're just trying to push any action that we could potentially take. They're pursuing any route that might lead to any action.
In 2002, there was a big push, and there were brochures that went out.
Yep,
and
I remember them.
and all that.
I've got
And
one.
then- And then again in about, I think it was around 2009 or 10, we went through that again. They came to us and they wanted us to be the applicant. We declined, and they did the education again, and we were on board with that. And this time, we're much in the same position where we could volunteer to be the applicant and follow up and begin actually capping these wells. A big part of it is the restriction you would put out there on property owners' property rights to access water in the shallow aquifer. They wouldn't be allowed to anymore. It would be illegal under your ordinance to put down new stab wells. And we would then begin the process of surveying and looking for these. And, if we meant business, we would go about discovering them and capping them. And then if the people still wanted to have irrigation, they could compel us to then connect their city water to the irrigation. If they're already connected to an irrigated system, we may be held responsible to make that connection. So 9,000 is probably, if we're aggressive and assert the ordinance and go out and start capping these wells, that's where it could be $9,000 just to cap the ones we know about. Other ones we don't know about, speculate there might be another 50 or so. I guess we really don't know.
Potentially, until we survey, we won't really have an accurate estimate. But it would be, to further break down that 9,000, having our Department of Public Works look into those themselves, it'd be about $100 to $150 per well, is a conservative estimate.
It was what?
A conservative estimate.
Okay.
As I recall, this was, when we brought this before, it was just voluntary. You told people that they were in the zone and.
Well, it's not
Right,
voluntary in the
recommended.
2 restricted zones that we have, it's mandatory.
But
So we
they
have
could
2
no
restricted
longer-
zones established already, and they're
But
not,
so for the people they said don't sprinkle, you're not supposed to sprinkle, but we didn't force them to cap the well.
I don't know if we did that or not, but I believe there was penalties levied against Walgreens for doing exactly that. They were
For
sprinkling from groundwater.
Because I thought it was just, you inform people, please don't. I didn't realize there was potential, there was.
No, the 2 zones we
damage.
have now, it's mandatory.
Okay,
With
So-
the Ottawa Steel site, it was a voluntary process, with us not acting as the applicant. When they initially asked, they sent out information saying that obviously this contaminant exists. If you would like to take it upon yourself to plug this well,
just,
it would be in your best interest. And very few people took action at the time.
but we really don't know how many people stopped using their wells.
In
right?
our, we
Do
have some kind of record kept by our planning department that listed, or maybe it was the Department of Environmental Quality, excuse me, I'll have to check. But it was like approximately maybe 4 property owners reported filling their well on their own well.
Okay, so people did report if they decided to quit using for sprinkling their lawn.
But you're talking about in the vinyl chloride plume as opposed to our two restricted zones.
Right. But I kind of hesitate to jump on this if we don't know how many wells we're talking about, so we don't know what the cost would be. Or
Right.
what the cost would be if whoever wants to then connect to have their sprinkling system be attached to city water, which we would have to pay for.
Right, and that's why it would be ideal if we could survey without obligating ourselves with any language saying we're acting as the applicant or pursuing this further, just to get a feel for how many wells might exist to further educate ourselves in making this decision.
Because when I look at that map and I think about one site, you could multiply that by about 100, and we could be capping wells all over.
Well, this is essentially citywide.
Okay.
With the
Right.
possible exception of the dunes along the lake, this is basically citywide. So there's stuff throughout the city, and we're
Right.
focusing just on 2 sites. So, I mean, this could potentially, if you wanted to do this thoroughly, you would basically have a citywide prohibition, and if we have to pay for all that, that'd be pretty expensive.
Yeah, well, you know what, I remember reading about this, what are one of the ways to dissipate vinyl chloride? It's not vinyl chloride when it goes into the ground, it's only vinyl chloride after it's been there. And one of the ways to dissipate it is to spray it into the air. You just don't want to be walking through the cloud when it's doing that.
Or be in town.
Or be,
It is vinyl chloride when it goes in the ground, it's a solvent. and
well, but I thought it changed, from my understanding, it changed when it's in there. It doesn't go in exactly as vinyl, it changes somehow or other when,
That's news to me, I thought it went in the
okay.
ground.
I don't know if they
When you
just-
sprayed it in the air and made it into a carcinogenic fume.
right, just
That's-
like I say, don't breathe it as you're you don't breathe as you're walking, as you're sprinkling your grass, don't be walking around there breathing the air. Not advocating it, only kidding
Okay,
people.
that sounds like sketchy advice.
Well, somebody told me that, I said, well, what if you're sprinkling near whatever school and just don't walk through the water? But the thing was, I read that is one of the ways to dissipate it is you spray it into the air and it dissipates. Maybe what I read was wrong, it was about 10 years ago, so.
Okay, yeah, the information.
I'm not recommending it, I'm just
Right.
repeating what I read in the article.
Yeah, no, the only information I have from the MDQ is that once it is brought, it's a sinking compound, so underground it remains not really a problem until these wells activate it by bringing the water up
Right.
into the air, in which it is then activated and the exposure is hazardous. So it's relatively not harmful as it remains underground until it reaches the surface.
Right.
And it can also vaporize into basements and similar cases, which is another concern. But that has not been found yet in this zone.
So what happens to it when it hits the river? Is it just,
What was that?
when the groundwater, when the plume hits the river, and then it dissipates into a much larger body of water?
Well, I don't think.
Or
if-
hasn't gotten there yet, just on the way?
Well, That much I'll have to look into, but as far as I am aware, it's a very, very, very slow moving compound, so it won't leave the groundwater it is in currently, the spot, the plume. So, like I said, I'm not exactly sure what will happen once it hits the river.
As I recall, it is slow moving, it is going to the river, and it just becomes diluted.
Right.
But when you pump even, I mean, it lies low in the aquifer, the shallow aquifer is something like 20 or 25 feet down. And when you take water out of the top of the aquifer, you stir the aquifer and bring it up higher so that it gets into people's basements or into other wells, and it moves around more. So, I mean, that's the reason you would want people to stop pumping it, because you want it to stay put and just move naturally, slowly, and dissipate. It's got a very long life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's moving, but I think that the best thing you can do is leave it. It's kind of like asbestos. The best thing you can do is leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
That's why further, it would be more useful to restrict groundwater usage through these wells to kind of decrease the risk that presents for those reasons.
Would a possible next step, being that nobody's in danger currently, we have safe drinking water, wonderful message, but that we would rather people not pull it up from a well, would it be a simple survey with our tax bill that goes out the next time? That's a postcard, self-addressed stamped envelope that says, I have a well, I don't have a well. And then we would know within this, maybe it's 1,000 households, it's 50 cents a postcard. Mike Burdine's here, maybe he'll give us a quote on postcards. Then we'd at least know how many in this area. We'd have a more educated guess, as it were, of how many wells we might be dealing with. And then the next time it comes up and we want to maybe take to be the responsible party, we at least know, hey, we're looking at $9,000, we're looking at $500, we're looking at whatever it may be. Just
Yeah.
a possible suggestion. Whether we do it or not, it's up to everybody else.
It would be nice to get our arms around the actual extent of this problem. It'd be desirable to be able to do something about it, but man, you could be looking at a lot of money.
Right, and that's why a survey would be a really helpful next step in the process.
We're working on a house in the 1000 block of Penoyer that's inside the Ottawa steel plume, and the homeowners decided to remove a well. So there you go, that's one down.
There you go.
We had one at my house at 626 Clayton when we bought it, and we closed that up, so there's two down.
Right, progress.
I live in
Right
this.
here, folks.
I live in this plume, and I've never had a well. So
Well, there you go. All right.
one that
Three
didn't
down.
exist.
I live close to the plume and was thinking about putting in a well.
Ah.
Maybe I should.
You got to realize that that's not a real sharp line there.
No, I realize that. And I know they said the more people that are sucking out of the water, the more you're helping it spread, so maybe we could just notify people within the plume zone to find out if we wanted to get an accurate number.
The last two times it's come up, that's sort of how we've left it. We've got a bit of traction now if we went about the difficult, the surveying with the postcards one way, people may self-report. Another is windshield surveys or walking down the sidewalks and looking for evidence of stab wells. If you see some discolored sidewalks that look like it's high mineral content in that water, we can find out where they are and do a pretty good job of the detective work. You can look at, we talked about looking at lawns in the area. If they're nice green lawns and then we look at their water bill and it's not a very high water bill, you can ascertain perhaps they've got a groundwater well.
Miracle grants.
So there's different ways we can investigate it. Our question would be, if we do that and we get good detailed intelligence, is the city council inclined to move forward with it? Because if we're not, it's kind of spending a lot of time doing all that detailed work, and then, well, we know there's these wells on these properties, but we're really not going to do anything about it. Seems like perhaps a waste of time. So we really wanted to get if we got a green light, like, yeah, let's go forward and find out where these are, and then it's I think, Josh, as you found out, when you find out that stab well is likely to be pumping carcinogens into the air you breathe, and you're probably not going to do it. You're probably going to abandon that well. So maybe we just do a big educational push rather than spend 50 cents on a postcard that says, do you have a well? Spend $1.50. And Mike's got a really nice new printer that he can do a nice full-color piece that
twice
we get
tonight
it to
you've
them and
been
explain to
mentioning
them
Mike.
what the risks are and that you probably ought to cap that well.
Put a skull and crossbones on it.
I'm in favor of sending out postcards and telling people the hazards that would happen associated with it, so
Right.
I think it's much better to do than trying to figure out how many wells we have. Educate the people, let them know how terrible it really is. And especially a lot of them might even have kids in their household, and let them know what the dangers are and what could happen. I think educating people is a big process for us to start out with.
That's probably the practical approach.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
I think most people, if they would know, well, you have a well, you live in this zone, might not be a good, you know, I don't know if anybody that would continue to pump the water out of there, so.
and maybe if we're sending that postcard not just to these zones, but everywhere, people might think about, you know, I've got a well and I'm not in that zone, but what else is down there?
Absolutely, just send them out.
I mean, the vinyl chloride is a particularly volatile organic compound, and it's quite dangerous. There's other stuff, and it's because of 150 years of industry in town, which is typical of an American city. So we're not unique in that respect.
Like my son lives out in Robinson Township out there. Before he bought the house from my father-in-law, he had the water tested. So it might be if you have a well and you're not in that zone, you might want to take your water out and have it tested just to making sure there's no other compounds in there that you might be exposed to. So I think educating everybody on the whole issue of well water and what the contaminants that could possibly be is a good start for us. I mean, getting out there and letting them know it's very, very good. So it's not like Bob says, it might not be just in those areas that you see here. It might have some other compounds in other areas. We don't know exactly. So if you have a well, definitely go and get it tested every so often just to make sure. You do the same thing if you have well water. If you live out in a different place where you don't have city water pumped to you, you always go out and get your water tested every so often. If you don't, shame on you, because especially if you live out in the country, you got farmers out there spreading fertilizers and stuff all over. You don't know the chemicals that are going down the ground and what you're getting down into the aquifer. So it's good for us to send that message out to people and let them know that we're very cautious of it and making sure that they know that they might have some contaminants that their kids are getting into. So I'm in favor of that, Pat.
So I guess the thing is, if you're just gonna have your water tested, what do they test for? I don't know if they test for all of these things. I know, having lived, you know, in a house, growing up in a house with a well, we had, they test the water, but do they test for all of these contaminants? I have no idea. We'd need to know somebody from the county that does it, whether they're gonna test for, you know, what do they come up with their tests?
Whatever you check on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you should know that rather before you have your water tested, is what are they testing for? But on the other hand, I don't want to freak everybody out. You might live in an area where there is no issue, so. All right, we good?
We'll talk about next steps and
Okay.
keep you posted. You know, I've got a bit of a feeling that there's not a strong inclination to want to impose the restrictive zone and be the applicant, but do some public education and advocacy for capping wells. And I imagine, you know, if we could do it without being the applicant and have a small fund available to assist people in capping their wells, that may be something we'll come back and ask for. It's not required, but we just want to help people get it done.
Right.
Once we get it done, maybe we get enough of them done that you get to a point where you are comfortable issuing the order and making it illegal to put down new wells in those areas. And I think the citywide approach may be wise. Looking at the map Bob gave us, there's a lot of plumes out there that we may not have as much intelligence on as we do these couple of big ones. So you never know. Anywhere in town, there's a possibility that there could be contaminants in that shallow groundwater that you don't want to pump up to the surface.
Yeah, Pat, I'd second your thought on a city fund of some sort available for those who are economically challenged who want to close up a well. I think that's a great idea. I'd definitely be in favor of that. And to just close it is not a significant expense. That's, well, at least in the process I've seen, it's not. Whether it's correct or not, I don't know, but there you go.
Well, wells of this size shouldn't be that hard to plug.
All right, thanks, Ashley. Vester is got a wildlife management update, but since it is only 2 minutes, or actually the clock is wrong, my computer is right, it tells me it's 7:30.
7:30.
And it's time to stop the work session and start the council meeting, and then we'll get back to Vester's report shortly. So at this point, Nancy, would you call the roll for the council meeting?
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Vanessa.
Here.
Michaela.
Here. Our invocation this evening will be given by Pastor Dan Eisner of Second Reformed Church in Grand Haven. Please remain standing after the prayer for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessing it is to live in America and the freedom we have here. Please bless our national leaders, the troops who defend our freedom. Thank you for the state of Michigan and the beautiful city of Grand Haven. As Coast Guard Festival's coming up, we pray for our police officers and those who oversee the city, our city council and leaders. We pray that it would be a safe week and a good week with many visiting our area. As we continue in the meeting tonight, please send your Holy Spirit here. Bless Mayor McCaleb as she leads us. And we pray that all things would be done in good order and to your glory. In Jesus' name we ask these things. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. All right, thanks very much. Next order of business is a couple of reappointments to 2 different boards. Nancy, would you read those, please?
To reappoint Eric Schmidt to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, EDC, with a term ending March 31, 2024, and Kirsten Runschke to the Planning Commission with a term ending June 30, 2021.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions on either one of these reappointments? If not, we will vote.
Scott.
Yes.
Fritz.
Yes.
Vanessa.
Yes.
Ruger.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes. We have a couple presentations also at our meeting this evening. First one, I'm going to ask Ryan Bond to come up, and he's going to make a presentation to Grand Haven Central High School.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Ryan, tell us who you are. Yeah.
Grand Haven Main Street,
Okay.
and with Diane Sheridan. And I have a little short statement, just our little mission statement and what this is all about tonight. So the mission of Grand Haven Main Street is to enhance a vibrant, historic business district through community efforts plus private and public partnerships. And one partnership that's actually across the street from our district, Grand Haven Central High School, I wrote a couple of grants. One is from CEDM, the Community Economic Development Association of Michigan, and another from none other than Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation. Didn't know they had a foundation, but they do. CEDM came up with $800 for us, and Scott's Miracle-Gro initially said $500, but then they wrote back and said, well, we're going to up this to $1,500.
Oh, awesome.
Those two amounts together, we have decided, and I have to give credit to Diane, because when I asked, well, what could we do in the area, you know, kind of a green environment, a green space here in the community, and she mentioned the greenhouse for Grand Haven Central, and that needed a little bit of work. So we wish to, as a city and as Grand Haven Main Street, partner with the high school to complete or winterize the greenhouse, and in hoping that this will be kind of a catalyst to encourage kind of an entrepreneurial spirit of engaging area youth in future community volunteer opportunities. And we're hoping that this partnership also with the school will raise awareness among other community partners and the general public here in Grand Haven by highlighting the benefits of bolstering the health and well-being of our shared environment via the creation or caretaking of existing green spaces. And so we're hoping that not only will this help the school and the students and staff there, and but it'll also be an example that'll shine for other future opportunities here. And I've seen just in the short time I've been here things like the catwalk and now the imagination station and how the community comes together. So this is a tiny dollar amount in comparison to those two big projects, but it's really, again, an example to me and others here that really demonstrate what this community does.
All right.
Sure. Sure. Thank you for inviting me, Ryan, and thank you for your efforts in helping us out. We do have a greenhouse at Central, and it's been there for about 10 years, and the original intent was for the open door preschool kids to use it in the summer. Lynn Hawley, who was the director of that program for many years, it was kind of her vision, and she wrote a grant, and we built the greenhouse. And then when she retired, I inherited a greenhouse at Central, our school did, and the growing season and the school year don't match up real well. So it's been our vision for a few years to have the greenhouse be year-round operational for our students. Our students at Central love the greenhouse program. One of the constraints we have right now is we can only run it in the fall and in the spring, and then it sits dormant in the winter. And so our vision has been for a long time to make it year-round operational. And this does it. This pushes us over the edge. We've had some fundraisers over the years, last couple years, and raised some money, and this does it. This is the last step. And so when Ryan approached us about it, we said, yes, we're in. And we're very excited with the goal of having it operational this winter. Sustainable farming and things like that, and having the students learn those skills are critical going forward. So thank you, Ryan, for your effort, and thank you to the City of Grand Haven for all your support of Central High School. And I get a big check.
Right. All right.
Also hopeful we can, I'm Diane Sheridan from Grand Haven Main Street. We're hopeful we can continue to work with Central High School and perhaps in the near future offer some herbs and maybe some tomatoes or other things that are sourced and grown locally by our students in some of our local eateries. So we have more plans.
All right. That'd be awesome. So we'll be looking forward to hearing about your first harvest out there then.
Well, maybe we'll bring some zucchini over.
Yeah, there you go. That'd be awesome.
There's a bumper crop this year.
That's right. Thanks very much. Our second presentation, Justin Roebuck, our Ottawa County Clerk, is going to talk to us about new election equipment.
Thank you all for having me. I have a little low-tech presentation, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Tonight.
If you need new tech, Ryan might write a grant for you.
Challenge accepted, and there you go. So really what we're here to talk about a little bit tonight is the election. I think that's some extra copies to include election equipment maintenance, which I believe tonight for consideration tonight in the near future. And what the equipment essentially is the city of Grand Haven $1,000 per year for the next 9 years for 50%, so last year. So what I want to do is share a little bit of background of why we're asking for that, and a little history of how we got it. Ottawa is a little bit unique in Michigan in that we're one of only 3 counties that own equipment at the county level. So you have 8 counties in Michigan, city and county governments that actually own the equipment and maintain the equipment. Some of those 1,000-pound lever machines back in 1946 the county spent. At the time, there's a way for us to standardize equipment that was used throughout the county. In partnership with you guys, every jurisdiction in Michigan was mandated to purchase new equipment. We went through that select process. For that, we really had a long conversation with our local clerks and with our own board of commissioners at the county level, saying, does it believe that you get from county ownership of the equipment? Again, is that of equipment, which means that we have a large pool of spare equipment as well. So right up until and on election day, that is not something that Linda and Nancy have to think or worry about in terms of the physical hardware of the equipment. That's all handled by the county. We employ troubleshooters on election day who are staffed throughout the county to kind of maintain that as well. The other thing that it does, the county insures the equipment. Even though it's stored locally, it's all insured centrally by the county as a part of our equipment pool as well. So we made that decision to kind of stick with that. It was really important to me as the county clerk that we get the input of our local unit clerks in the selection process as well. And it was kind of a long process. We spent over a year interviewing, if you will, our vendors for the election equipment. We held a couple of public forums where equipment was demonstrated, invited our local clerks and members of the community to that as well. The company that we ended up choosing is called Hart InterCivic, and they're based in Austin, Texas. They've been around and really the newest on the market in terms of the system itself. And what we really found appealing about that system mainly were some of the security features that it offered. I think the world is a little bit of a different place now than it was 15, 18 years ago when we purchased our last round of equipment. So it offers a lot of authentication factors that go into the software element that were never there before. It has a lot of steps, audit logs, audit trails within the system that we can monitor how the system is being used, and we also believe it's more accessible. It's a much more kind of a user-friendly interface for our voters, and that's important as well. So those were some of the reasoning behind that. The cost of the equipment itself, in 2002, we had what we call the Help America Vote Act. That was a large federal grant pool that came in and basically allowed local jurisdictions to modernize their election equipment. There was a little incident in Florida in 2001 where somebody won by 437 votes, and then the federal government realized maybe we should think about our election system in terms of what it looks like. So we had a lot of actual leftover dollars statewide left. We had another $10 million come in from state. At the end of the day, we really had a large chunk of money coming from state and federal dollars. In Ottawa County, $979,000 was covered by state and federal grants. $130,000 was covered by the county cost, and $0 came from Grand Haven. So there was no upfront cost to the city for the purchase of any of the hardware of the equipment. But looking forward, as we really started focusing on the cost of maintenance was considerably more under this contract than we had previously. One of the things that Help America Vote Act did was everyone in the country practically was purchasing election equipment right around 2002, 2003. And so our vendors were able to offer some great deals on the maintenance portion of that. And we were benefiting from that for the past several years. So as we kind of come out of that and into a new contract, maintenance is more expensive, and we are looking at sustainability moving forward. And so we felt strongly that taking a look at sharing this cost, this maintenance cost with the local units was an important way to kind of move forward the equipment, but with some buy-in and some assistance from the local. At that I think it's $1,011 per year. It's a 10-year total contract. State dollars pay for the initial 5 years of maintenance. And so what we're looking at is actually the remaining 5 years, years 6 through 10 of that maintenance agreement. And out of a lot of conversations we've had with our local units, we've amortized that amount over what amounts to a 9-year period. So it lessens the burden. In other words, in 5 years, we're not going to go to the city and say, you know, you owe us twice as much annually. So that's how we've arrived at that figure. The other thing that this maintenance agreement does, which really has not been done before, is put something in writing. So we've had this 70-year partnership and literally no written agreement since 1946. And so we felt it was important to kind of, lay out the terms and the expectations, things that you can expect of us and that we can expect of you. Again, county ownership, county insurance of the equipment. The other thing we felt important to put in there was if you expand your precincts, the county will still maintain that 100% coverage of the equipment cost and essentially only ask for the 50% maintenance portion of that as well. So if you purchase new equipment, it would be under the same agreement we have now. That's kind of the process in a nutshell. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you guys, but definitely wanted to open it up for any questions you might have or any concerns. Happy to answer any questions for sure.
Nice job, Justin. I think it should say Ottawa County just smarter since 1946. That's a brilliant way to do it, to work collaboratively, especially on something as significant as elections. And I think especially with the maintenance costs as you're presenting tonight and the intricacies of the software programs and the tech-savvy people that it involves, for us to be able to rely on you and the team at Ottawa County rather than our own staff right here for those purposes, especially for that concentrated period of time, it's a great partnership. So I think the breakdown makes perfect sense. As far as $1,000, it's completely reasonable. The one question that I have at the tail end of this is on the, this covers the operational costs and the operation, the maintenance. Is there a budgeting process? Because at some point in time, I imagine these have a life of 10 years, 20 years.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's at the Ottawa County level, not necessarily citywide, but I guess
Sure.
I'd ask that of you just for some insight.
A couple of things on that. That is definitely a conversation that we've been having for probably over a couple of year time frame with our local clerks as well. So we were very fortunate in this round of purchasing because we had so many dollars going into it. But in another 15 years, as we're looking down the road, I think we really need to look at what is sustainable for us and to plan ahead as a community here. And so we have put some money aside. In fact, the money that we used for the $130,000 initial upfront cost of the county, that was all money that had been collected over the past about 10 years in programming fees. So we actually did charge, for example, if in the city election, if it was not a state or federal election, we would charge $100 per precinct as a programming fee. We're no longer doing that with the municipalities. We are doing that with the school districts. So we want to continue that conversation with you guys actually to say, going forward, what makes sense? Does it make sense to invest in, a fund where we're kind of ready to hit the ground running in another 15 years? So that thought process has started for sure. I wish I could tell you that we had the end solution, but
I'm glad you're at least thinking about it, and
yeah, we're
absolutely
working
let us
on it
know.
for sure.
So, thanks. Yeah.
We've been pretty intensely aware of replacement costs of just about everything, and the fact that nobody ever thinks about it and sets money aside. So it's best to plan that and build that into your costs. Are these this cost distribution based on population or on number of precincts?
It's basically the number of precincts. So the true cost of it is based on the number of pieces of equipment that are used in the city, which is really based on your number of precincts.
Okay.
So dollar for dollar, you see Georgetown Township there is our largest jurisdiction, precinct-based jurisdiction, and they're at 4,500 per year.
So based on that, it's not likely to change over time. The dollars may change, but the distribution probably won't.
Right, very, very likely that that will remain the same. One note to add as well on the maintenance agreement, so this is a 10-year contract. We also have as a stipulation of that contract that maintenance costs beyond the 10 years cannot increase more than 3% or CPI, whichever is lesser.
So did you say you charge the schools, and you don't charge the schools, and you do charge the municipalities, or the other way around?
The other way around, because we previously charged everyone. So if it was an election that, for example, the city had a millage request or something come on the ballot in a special election, you would be charged the cost of the programming. Now, because we have this maintenance agreement, this really, we feel like dollar for dollar makes more sense. This is, your way of paying that maintenance cost. Previously was the programming fees. The school districts are not sharing any maintenance costs. So it would be the school districts, the pool authority in Holland. There are a couple of other authorities, throughout the county that have the ability to place language on the ballot. So we would charge them a programming fee.
Okay, all right.
And that's a fairly common practice throughout the state.
Okay, no, because since they hold their elections not at the same time that other elections are going on, I figured that would be a fair thing to do. The other question I had was, maybe I'm just not quite clear on this, is that it's $1,111 for the city of Grand Haven. And it's for 10 years, 9 years, starting. So what's the total? Is the total 10,000, or is the total 5,000 starting in year 5?
So if you look on page 4 of this handout, the upper left slide kind of gives you a little bit more holistic cost total over the entire 10-year contract. The state is covering $475,000 in maintenance. The county covers $237,000. And Grand Haven's portion, the city's portion, is $9,100.
Okay, so that's the total for, and we could pay that, and that's a tenth of that per year, or a ninth of that per year. Okay, all right. I wasn't quite clear on that. Okay.
That's right.
Is there a break if we pay it all at once? Only kidding. Never mind.
There's really no difference.
There's no way out of it.
So.
Okay, all right.
Maybe we will wait. Wait till the end of the
Or wait till the end and have them catch up with it.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Pat's got a question.
Are you going to all 23 local units and presenting this?
Yeah, yep. We just felt like it was important to have that conversation. It's been a while since we've talked about election equipment, and so yeah, it's a busy summer.
We've got coffee in the back if you got another meeting to go to.
Nice hot coffee.
That's right. I've tried. You guys have been so nice in trying to put me at the beginning, and I've tried to put the kids to bed every night so far. So that's been helpful for my wife.
Well, thank you. Anybody else have?
No, I don't think we could do this on our own.
No.
Not for this kind of money.
We appreciate it, guys.
Right.
Have the kids watch
Thank you
on
much.
YouTube tomorrow.
That's right.
Did a good job with this. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate your partnership for sure. You guys.
Good deal. All righty. That brings us to the approval of the consent and regular agendas. Are there any changes?
I have none, Your Honor.
You have none? Anybody else have a suggestion? If not, then we need a motion to accept the agendas as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Been moved and seconded, and unless there are questions, we will vote.
Fritz?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes.
Ruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Caleb?
Yes. All right, general business, call the audience. This is one of 2 opportunities to address council on anything you have on your mind. It looks like there's a race for the microphone. just tell us who you are and where you live. See you, Justin. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Andy Cawthon, 50 Howard, representing the Musical Fountain Committee. Thank you for approving item H on your consent agenda for the formation of a community service fund at the Grand Haven Community Foundation to support the sound investment of a new audio system for the Musical Fountain. We kicked off the fundraising on Saturday night. Two of us did bucket brigade in the crowd of about 4,000. We turned in $457 to the city treasurer today.
All right.
That ought to cover the voting machine thing.
Buys the buckets anyway.
Sure. So thank you for that. Thank you for your continuing support of the fountain. We hope you're enjoying the shows. We've added 2 new theme shows for the summer public schedule, because on theme show nights we are between 4,000 and 6,000 attendees. So it's quite a bang for downtown.
Absolutely.
Andy, did I hear you say that supporting the audio at the Musical Fountain is a sound investment?
A sound investment.
I think that's what I heard somebody. Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge the pun. It was very nicely played. That's all right. It's good. It's good.
And it is a sound investment.
Yeah.
Logos to follow.
Yeah, nice.
Mike Verdine, 619 Washington, and also, strangely enough, 623 Washington Verdine Inc. General Manager. A couple weeks ago, I went to a Centertown business neighborhood meeting, and it came to our attention that there's going to be a change to Columbus Street from Harbor to 5th. It's going to be two-way. What prompted this was some construction on Harbor Avenue, and that the change to Columbus is going to be permanent. Hearing that, we became somewhat excited, and we thought, hey, gosh golly, that would be really cool if it continued all the way from 5th to the highway. This would add more access to some commercial businesses along Columbus between 6th and 7th and 7th to the highway. So went to the Main Street Board last week, had a very fun time, and I asked a request there that they also bring to City Council the same request I'm going to bring tonight, which is I'd like to ask that the City Council direct the City Manager in identifying the costs, the true costs of what it would take to change 5th to the highway on Columbus Avenue to two-way to match what's being done Harbor to 5th. At the meeting I was at, the Centertown neighborhood, some numbers were thrown out, $60,000, $80,000, because no one knows what MDOT wants and no one knows what the railroad wants. Well, the railroad has lights going both ways, the same as it has in many other places in town already on a one-way street. I don't know what MDOT will say. I run a print shop. But I'd like to know what the real numbers are. If it's $80,000, $100,000, probably not worth doing right now. But if it's $5,000, $10,000 because you got to move some concrete, I definitely think that's worth it for the property value and the commercial investment for the Centertown neighborhood. So that is my request. Please direct the City Manager to investigate the true costs and report back, and ultimately, hopefully, support changing Columbus to a two-way street, continuing 5th to the highway. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Anybody else?
Gary Van Valkenburg. I represent a small group of citizens, community citizens that are advocating for the final burial of the overhead wires on Harbor Drive. I've gotten information, and I've gotten assurances from the following businesses and residence areas: Zephyr Condo Association, Tippecanoe, Harbor House, Dairy Treat, Pier 212, Lago Condominiums, Kirby House. We're working with the cottages, Harbor One, and the Coast Guard Festival people who are interested in this process as well. I've sent you a letter about my concern of the safety of these overhead, outdated, obsolete, no longer compatible with our community in that area. So our goal is to somehow get this accomplished during this construction period, which the streets will be open. And as a former construction person, hundreds of miles of underground and overhead cable, I know that the time to put the underground cable is when the streets are open. So I'm imploring you all to consider this along with the new safety concerns that I have because of the accident. I live on Harbor. I see children, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people underneath those lines during Coast Guard. If you ever drive by the retreat, there's people standing in line right directly under 13,000 volt lines. Lines were constructed sometime in the past. They're no longer applicable for that area. 13,000 volt poles are this far from the curb in several areas. In several areas, there are 13,000 volts on a line that comes into the street that far. Those lines should come down on any of those periods. Weekends, whenever, I'm telling you that there would be a catastrophe. So our committee would like to work with the City Council, and I will personally be lobbying very hard the Board of Light and Power. They've already put part of the area underground, and I think this could be accomplished construction period.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks very much. Do you have a petition there at all?
Pardon?
Do you have a petition there at all?
No, instead of bringing a petition, I just brought the names, which
The
I
names?
personally went out
Okay.
and talked to, get their support for this.
All right,
However, if a petition is required, we can get it, but I think everybody knows that those wires should be buried. It's a matter of how do we get there.
all right. We,
By the way, all the members that I've discussed, and plus all the people in front of these wires, waterfront district, and I guess they call it Main Street taxpayers, and we as residents are paying additional tax to fund things like this community betterment. Perhaps some of those funds in the future, I understand they're all committed to now, but some of those funds could somehow be used to help this project get done now with future funding and or repayment of whatever. So in addition to being a large number of voters, we're all taxpayers, we're all Board of Light and Power customers, and additionally we pay this additional 1.78 mils for the call it DDA. Well, thank you.
okay. Did you have a comment, Pat?
I was just going to comment that the City Council did hold a public hearing on the special assessment district for this project, and pretty much all those names that Mr. Van Volkenburg listed off are on record supporting putting them underground and agreeing to pay for it. I think the vast majority of those that commented at your public hearing were supportive of the special assessment district. So there's clear evidence of support from the property owners along that stretch.
And we are also putting in the conduit as we do it, are we not, if I remember correctly?
We believe the BLP will be doing that, yes, while the street is open so that it's ready for the wires when we do get the project underway.
I have a comment on that because part of the reconstruction is replacing the existing streetlights, which are now on utility poles. So that means that when they do this and they put only the conduit in and don't remove the poles, they're putting additional poles on Harbor Drive to cover the new streetlights which they're replacing, which also means they're going to be burying electric wires there anyway. So I think the time is now to get the project completed, if at all possible, and we as a group, and we'll be lobbying the Board of Light and Power as well, and some support, but we need to keep talking. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
As I recall also from the public hearing, our concern was that there was no assurance at that time of BLP participation. Have we heard anything new on this?
No, nothing new.
because we were a little cautious because BOP, we'd hoped to kick in about half the money. That's a pretty substantial chunk of it, so I think that we need to follow up with BLP and see what their intentions are.
If we got support from the BLP, would we then be willing to revisit it on council level? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think that was the big reservation, as I recall. We had our public hearing, we had very much positive feedback, and then we were concerned about approving it without knowing what BLP would do, and then suddenly the bill doubles for everyone. I'm not sure if everybody really signed up for that, so it'd be nice to know where BLP is.
We need to see something concrete from the BLP. Until we do, there's not much we can do with it.
Right.
We need to see, they have to make a decision one way or the other.
Well, we take comments, and Mr. Van Valkenburg is going
Thank you
to
very
address the
much.
BLP, and we'll get a decision made. We don't, it's almost crunch time, so it's time to make a decision, so. But, thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Joyce Workman. I own Vintage Green. It's at 7 North 7th. You're going to vote tonight for me to have some extra space. If you have any questions on that, I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and I'm available to answer if you would have them.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Kemp. Nope. My name is Kemp Blome, and I live at 1820 Pine Court, right here in the city. This evening, we are presenting cards to the Grand Haven City Council from individuals across the Grand Haven community who are in support of the recommended retirement of the Sims coal plant. We've had about 10 to 12 individuals out collecting these cards at various locations, like Grand Haven, the Grand Haven Farmers Market, since about mid-May. When we talk to community members, we ask them what they know about the retirement of the Sims plant. We've had hundreds of conversations with individuals in the community. Tonight, we are presenting to you our postcards from over 400 individuals in support of the retirement of the Sims coal plant. These individuals are from Grand Haven and the surrounding communities. Thank you for your time and your commitment to making our city the best lakeshore community in the state.
I'm Mary Huntington, 1312 Hillcrest, Grand Haven. First, I'd like to quickly read over what is stated on the card. The J.B. Sims plant in Grand Haven has reached the end of its life cycle. Based on research conducted by the Grand Haven Board of Light and Power, the aging coal-fired power plant is no longer cost-effective and not worth risking future investment. That is why the BLP is recommending the retirement of the coal plant by June of 2020. It is time for our community to move toward diversified power generation that is cleaner, more sustainable, and economically beneficial for BLP customers. Even as you know, the plant's employees and union leadership support retiring the plant. Our future as a viable place to live, work, and play in West Michigan is directly linked to creating a forward-thinking, sustainable community. That is why we urge you to support BLP's recommendation to retire the Sims plant. Second, we are very excited to see the working groups that came out of the June 27th meeting. It's good to know these work groups teams are composed of representatives from both the City Council and the Board of Light and Power, and as a team will be instrumental in finding the information needed and leading the way to come up with solutions to continued snowmelt in Grand Haven and what is the best pathway will be to future energy generation for Grand Haven. We believe with these work groups in place, Grand Haven is on its way to working together as a team and feel a vote by the City Council can move forward quickly in support of retiring the aged Sims coal plant. Third, I'd like to thank the council for putting the best interests of the community first and foremost in making these really big decisions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jan O'Connell. I'm with the Sierra Club, and we have made copies of all of the petitions for all of the city council members, so you can peruse through and see if they're any of your neighbors, friends, or whatever. And I maybe Jaden. Jaden has been an activist with us for the last 3 summers and has been very active.
And could you give Nancy your address, please?
My address is 201 Ivanhoe Avenue Northeast, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Thank you.
Yep. But I represent about, we have about 240 some Sierra Club members in Grand Haven area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's a copy of the petition right in front, so you can see what it's like.
Oh, so this is mine.
Thank you.
There you go. And this, I don't know if you want to, that goes to the clerk, so. Yeah, those are the originals. So anyway, thank you for all you do, and I'm very much looking forward to the working groups and how that turns out, and that we can solve any questions that are out there now and move forward with a vote from the City Council, a positive vote.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we will continue with our work session. So, Fester, if you want to come up and talk to us about your wildlife management update. Oops, I guess when folks clear out.
Good evening. Vester Davis, assistant to the city manager.
Can you, Eric, is that not?
Can you pull the microphone
pull
straight
the
up?
microphone up?
It's
Yeah.
been quiet all night.
Yeah, we can't hardly hear up here.
How about now? Is that a little bit
Why
better?
don't I have a bad back or anything like that? Can you?
Just pull it straight up and just
Yeah,
talk.
stretch it. Yeah, there you go.
Just project your voice, should be all right.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit better? All right.
All right. I see Eric going crazy over there.
So tonight I wanted to give you a bit of an update for the work session on wildlife management here in the city of Grand Haven. Usually not lucky enough to get the second time around doing this presentation, so I figured I would do it a little bit easier, break it down in chunks, and give you things work sometimes. Okay.
All right.
So in summary, we're all familiar, back in 2008, committee put together just a few things to evaluate, a few topics rather, to evaluate and see if something needs to be done or should be considered. And that was part of the 2008 Grand Haven Urban Deer Management Report. And we looked at the several different factors and see if there's trending up, trending down, what the status is. And so that's pretty much the baseline of this presentation tonight, is to provide data to you all to consider action and helping us out at the staff level of planning our next steps. So upward trend data in car and deer accidents, trend data in deer population estimates, local cases of Lyme disease, valid deer damage complaints that are reported to the city manager's office or some form that the city manager's office would follow up on. So see-click fix, phone conversations, emails, that sort of thing. Also, damage to the local ecology and population disease outbreaks for the deer.
Just a second, these are all the ones that we had for our management we did back in 2000, whatever, right?
2008, yeah.
2008, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because since then we've learned so much about Lyme disease. It's not just necessarily deer that is actually bringing the ticks in. We've had an outbreak of ticks in Ottawa County and all over the state, and it's not just from the deer, it's also from other animals, and that they've educated us very well. The newspaper has, the Grand Rapids Press, our own Tribune has reported it. So I think if we had anything to do, the Lyme disease is a big thing that's not necessarily only deer for deer management. That's my point.
Yes, sir. And so on that note, I looked at the human cases and also pets because of the city. But you're right on about that. We maybe can evaluate that and make some more changes. So the first one, car deer accidents, obtained this information from Michigan State Police. They keep the database for traffic accidents. Looking at the data of the last couple of years, so far we're at 16, or 3-year average is what the trigger was, or suggested that we look at the 3-year average. So compared to the last year, or the last time I gave a report on this particular topic, it was I think at 9, so it has trended up thus far. We're halfway through 2018. We usually see these start trickling, going up in the fall, winter seasons. Figure 1 and Figure 2, just a few other circumstances that are reported. Again, we're not going to get, they're not always reported. You know, some people drive off, but this is the data that was provided that we have to go off of for now.
So you're saying here, Figure 2 is from January to June 19.
Of 2018, yes, sir.
Yeah, 2018. Since then, we've had our call just before that, and it looks here that the deer accident has gone down. School bus, 0, from 3 to 0. Hit and runs, way down. Fleeing police, whatever that is.
Deer fleeing police.
Yeah, that's pretty strange, isn't it? But I see all the numbers have gone down considerably in Figure 2 compared to what Figure 1 is from 2017 to 2018.
So Figure 1 is a entire year, 12 months from January 1 through December 31st, and 2017. And then Figure 2 is from January 1 of 2018 to June of this year, 2018.
And that's just the city of Grand Haven?
Yes, that's reported to the Michigan State Police.
In the city of Grand Haven?
From my understanding, yes.
I just want to make sure that this is the city of Grand Haven, not overall, because I know how it works. If it's, what does the city of Grand Haven Police Department have to say in reports?
This was the data that was reported. I can evaluate it and see if it's...
I'd just like to know what the city of Grand Haven has, if you could, Vester. Just kind of check on that for me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just for me to clarify, you said that we're trending up. Is that correct in the 3-year average?
When I deer car accident, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it has trended up from the prior time. Past report about a year ago.
Okay, thanks.
Population.
So we had 62 hit and run accidents in Grand Haven in 2017?
According to the data that I received, yes.
Seems like a pretty big number for a town this size.
Those could be some in a parking lot or somebody's
Right.
car gets dinged and it doesn't get reported.
These are hit and runs. These aren't deer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying that
So that's why it wasn't deer
Oh,
fleeing.
it's not deer
Talking
fleeing.
car
It's
deer
not deer
accidents.
fleeing
I was
police.
trying to figure it out because it says
Not-
car deer accidents, and I'm seeing these numbers, and
No, this is
it
all
doesn't-
kinds of stuff. So there's 583 accidents in 2017 that were
They're
reported.
just total accidents completely, not just car and deer.
One of those is a different accident.
Yeah, it's not.
The only one that has anything to do with deer is that second one.
Except for the turkey. There's one turkey.
Turkey.
There's one turkey
So they're in
accident.
cahoots, yeah.
The moose might be.
And the bear is just north of here.
So the other animal is probably a raccoon.
I thought maybe the hit and run was the deer ran to the side of the car and took off because
Yeah,
then it kept
then it
on
was-
going.
then it
It
was
hit and
fleeing
run.
po- then it was fleeing
I was looking at
police.
this as going car deer accidents. I don't know how they figured that one out, but okay. Now I understand it.
All right, makes more sense.
It does, doesn't it?
And next up, population estimates. As we all know, local deer population estimates have become increasingly difficult to track. So what we did was, from the last time we gave this report, about 30 white-tailed deer per square mile. And I know that there was a call for more information on that regard if needed. So included in the packet was a proposal from Grand Valley State University students, Go Lakers, to study the deer population structure and movement patterns throughout the city of Grand Haven. So as again, that was included in your packet, and that's something that we could look at if the council was interested in. I think the total price on that was about $5,500 just based on the proposal that was submitted, let me say it, only May. Again, cases of Lyme disease, as Councilmember Fritz pointed out, this is something that's a little bit difficult to get accurate data on because someone can contract Lyme disease somewhere else and they can be an Ottawa County resident and they report it here, so it may not have happened or they may not have contracted it in Ottawa County, but they live here. And so when I spoke with Ottawa County and found out that there were 13 reported cases of Lyme disease, not every case is going to be reported, and not every case is actually Lyme disease, but it does carry the antibodies of Lyme disease. Also, as I clarified in the slide above, is that someone who has been by an Ottawa County tick could live elsewhere, but would not be included in these counts. So that last note that's on the slide is in 2013, there were 3 cases reported compared to 13 in 2017, so that gives you a little bit of context as to whether it's trending up or trending down. It gives you that little bit of fact. Oh. So in addition to what I explained earlier is that I also reached out to veterinary clinics to talk about Lyme disease, and they're not required to report when there is a case of Lyme disease found in a pet. Compared to the last time I looked at this issue, some of the clinics just didn't have the data to provide this time around, but at least one of them was able to tell me that they've had 16 cases at their clinic. I can provide that information also in the packet for you to review, but this time around it's just a little bit more challenging to try to get that information due to privacy, and also just it's not a requirement for the clinic to report. Number of complaints is another factor. Most complaints are filed during the fall and spring season. That's when I get the most in the city manager's office. Those that come back home to their home here in Grand Haven after the winter, they find a lot of damage has happened. Also in the fall, those that are here year-round, they also make phone calls to the city manager's office. I began just trying to get in their property, so it varies, $50 to thousands of dollars. So it's depending on how much they've invested in their landscaping. Also, just reports through our file now, email, phone, and SeeClickFix. You get a few of them in there of folks taking pictures of people feeding deer, several deer that's out in their front yard. Just another way to report what they're seeing. Another one, local ecology. We're all familiar. Grand Valley State University also provided us with a study of Duncan's Woods and Mulligan's Hollow. Provide you with copies of that report if you haven't had it already. And they express that there are several different factors that have impacted local ecology. But I found this at the very end that monitoring and management of wildlife and so forth, that wildlife, white-tailed deer are an impact to the local ecology. And they identify a few other things, but it's very important to monitor and manage the wildlife. So again, more information is included in the report from Grand Valley. population outbreaks with the deer. According to the DNR, chronic wasting disease is not present in Ottawa County now, but it is in our neighboring, just to the east, Kent County. So they heightened their or increased their sampling because it has the potential to move this way into Ottawa County. So it is on their radar. It is something that they're keeping an eye on. Conversely enough, they still have a concern about episodic hemorrhaging disease in the lakeshore counties. It remains a concern, and a fact is that in 2012, about 50,000 deer statewide perished because of an EHD outbreak, and they're very resilient afterward because of the population. So in summary, options just for next steps. I know we're getting into the fall, and if we're going to take some action, or if the city council would like to, we need time to plan. So there are 3 options. You know, if you want to increase this to other options, feel free to communicate that with us. First one, do not proceed with any planning. Just continue to track the data and collect data in the city manager's office. Second, bring forth a resolution that was passed about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, giving us authorization and begin looking at this a little bit closer and planning something for the fall, and all the while continue collecting data. And third option is contract with Grand Valley State University to track the deer structure and so forth that's included in their proposal, and we'll continue to collect data in the city manager's office. So with that being said, that's
Okay. I, for one, would love to do what the GVSU study proposed to do, was track it with DNA in the droppings to find out how the deer move around our community. I think that's something we don't know. I don't think if anywhere in the state they've done a study like that to see, you know, how the deer actually do move around in their territory. So I think if they're able to do that for us, I think that would be really not just valuable for us, but valuable statewide to the DNR to know, you know, what deer habits are, because usually they tell you, you know, we have no idea, what, you know, how they move around, how they travel. They guess, but but in this case they would be able to really stipulate, you know, where these particular deer that they're sampling have traveled, or what their range is. So I'd like to engage, because I think the study that GVSU did was amazing, and I think what they have the potential to do much more for us, and I think it'd be a shame if we didn't take advantage of that. So, you know, I for one would love to engage that. And as far as the other, I would also be in favor of continued look to see where the pockets of deer are that we can cull, because I think the 25 that we took last year is just barely keeping up with the birth rate. They were walking. I have never seen deer in my neighborhood before, and they were walking down the street, right down the middle of the street 2 weeks ago. So that tells me that they're not far from browsing off the investment I make in my property every year, including my neighbors who never had problems before, and now they're rubbing they're trimming all their hedges for them and rubbing the bark off their 100-year-old lilac bushes. So they're just about 3-4 blocks away from me. So I don't see any decrease. I see maybe they're not so concentrated in certain areas, but they are spreading out, certainly are on the east side of town. So I'd be game to see what we can do to, at least, like I say, keep up with the birth rate on these things. So, but thanks for your, it's hard to pin some of these numbers down, because they're not just city numbers, they're Ottawa County numbers. It's hard for me also that there's very few veterinarians that seem to keep track of their Lyme disease cases. It seems like it's a serious enough disease in an animal that they would track those. So that's kind of difficult for me that they don't have that. There's only one vet that keeps that information. That's kind of bizarre to me. I think that they would keep record of that. It's not you, it's them. I can't believe that they don't keep track of, how many cases of Lyme disease come into them on dogs. Because I had a dog that had it and it was terrible. So, well, those are mine. I'd stick with the GVSU, and I would look to gather our information and apply to the DNR for another permit this year, and not put a number on it. Because I know that they're around. I've been in people's yards. A friend of mine had one die under her deck that they found out when it started to heat up in the spring, and they wondered what the odd smell was when they went out on their deck, and it was the carcass of a deer that had passed away during the winter. So anyway, that's my.
I had a possum like that died in my garage, and it smelled bad too.
Yeah.
So yeah, dead animals don't smell good.
Dead animals don't smell good.
About as good as that plant in Grand Rapids, right?
Yeah, that's a different kind of smell. So the ticks that we're worried about, how many of these cases of Lyme disease occurred because the tick jumped off a deer onto a person? Any idea? How many of them had anything to do with deer? We have no idea. The whole Lyme disease, as Mike said, was a red herring all along. You could slaughter every deer for a 25-mile radius and barely make a dent in the tick population here, because most mammals and birds carry them. They just spread them around. They're black-legged ticks. They're not unique to deer. Deer don't carry or catch Lyme disease. It's just a tick population that lives on animals and lives in the grass. And it has a lot more to do with the mild winters we're having than it does with any particular species of animal that might be carrying them. So, I mean, this is culling deer and eliminating Lyme disease has pretty tenuous connection, if any at all. I understand when the 2008 culling triggers were adopted, there was a lot of numbers that were adopted to placate members of the committee, and the Lyme disease was one of those. And it was something that got people's attention because nobody wants to be sick or have sick animals or anything, but there's not a lot to do with deer population that you can actually put your finger on. And I also wanted to mention that when Grand Valley did the Spotlight Deer surveys a few years ago, I rode with those folks several times. We went out at night and helped. I didn't count for them because I wanted to remain a dispassionate party. I didn't want to have any influence on the results, but I rode along just to watch their methods and see how objective they were, and I was pretty satisfied that they were doing the best they could to count deer in the city, and they weren't counting deer twice, and they weren't. It was a pretty straightforward and pretty professional operation by those students, and their intent was to be objective and to tell us, here's what you got as near as we can tell. And they also tried to look at certain parts of the city more than others. They were told to focus on the hot spots for deer, but they also looked at spots that weren't so hot to get an actual average around town, because clearly some areas have more traffic and deer than others. I thought that was a pretty good approach, but then that morphed into a request for some extensive funding of GPS collars and such, and they wanted to track the deer movements. And while I was sympathetic to that at the time, it was pretty clear that that information wasn't going to be used for much, so it's hard to justify spending the money on it. The resolution you've got here, or the proposal you've got here from GVSU, well, I'm not one to turn down information. I think information is generally good if it's objectively gathered and if it's treated as base information as opposed to information for a specific purpose. I'm generally sympathetic with that. As I read this proposal, it's all about basically refining their targets for the culls. So they're really looking at where can we get the most bang for our buck by culling deer. I think that's what this proposal is about. And while like I say, in general, I appreciate getting more information and having accurate information and specific local information, and you might get that with this. I'm wondering if reading the introduction and the apparent intent of the proposal, if it's truly an objective proposal. I would like to think that the Grand Valley people are objective scientists. I'm just reading the words that are here, and it's pretty clear that the whole intent of this is to find out where the best place is to perform the call. So I'm a little skeptical about that. But I could go along with it if I was satisfied that, if these people made it clear that they were interested in giving us just simple, objective data. as opposed to data targeted or biased to a particular result. So my two thoughts on my 2 cents on the proposal. The other things you've got here, we've talked about numerous times. I think we can talk more, and we'll probably end up in the same place. So
I guess
I'll stop.
okay, because I disagree with that. The purpose of the study of the movement of the deer is only to find out, where the hot spots are. So that's where you're going to concentrate your call. I don't think that's the purpose. I think it is the purpose of to track, how they move and what their, where a particular deer's territory is. Because we hear all kinds of stories. They come from here and they go there. This way you can pinpoint it. That is that deer's territory, and that's where he's leaving his droppings. That to me would be just a very interesting thing about deer habitat, deer movement. I just think it'd be interesting information. I don't have an issue with that. I don't think there's put it this way, I don't think there's a hidden purpose in doing it.
Well, certainly not hidden. All we gotta do is read this first paragraph. That's all it's about.
Okay, that's your interpretation.
Finding where they are, so you can.
Yeah. No, it's how they travel.
So, I mean, we could read this together,
okay,
but I mean, it's pretty clear what it says.
We disagree then.
Well, I'll jump in. Thanks, Fester, for the report. I'm just from a pure data-driven perspective, I'm very keen on acquiring the services of Grand Valley State students to track the deer, or to do their evaluation as presented here. I think there'll be a lot of valuable information in that, especially given the proposal of planting different trees and shrubs and so forth as far as the dune restoration project or part of the Grand Valley study goes. Before we plant anything, I'd like to know where the deer are traveling and how much they're eating, and if we can evaluate that. It looks like they can get pretty detailed with this analysis, so I'm thrilled with that possibility. And then, as Bob and Mike have said, and as I've said in the past, regarding what the trigger is for culling deer, this is not what they've said, but I agree that there are certain factors as a part of that 2008 study that could be considered subjective rather than objective. And I continue to believe that there is an objective number of deer, and that number alone should determine what triggers a cull. There is approximately 1.2, I believe it's 1.2 to 1.4 square miles of city-owned property that is wooded, and that is suitable habitat for deer, just in city-owned property, not counting private residences, which I don't believe should be included in that factor. And in that square mile, it can statistically support a certain number of deer, and when that number is exceeded, that's when a cull should be triggered. Forget the rest of the deal for the numbers and the ratios and the accident reports, although accidents are significant. But at any rate, I think in a big picture, if we were to move forward with something, I'd love to see that change down the road. And whether it's culling or some other method of population control, I'm open to that. But I think a first step is definitely this Grand Valley study. So thanks for presenting this. That's all I got.
I'm also willing to go along with the Grand Valley study. Be interested in information to collect. But I think, like Josh said, the population of deer per square mile has to determine if we're going to have a call or not. And in my neighborhood, I've seen an increase in deer, even though we've taken 25 deer. I don't think we've kept up with the birth rate. So I don't have a problem with the study, but for my purposes, in my neighborhood, I go along with the call again. I think there are plenty of deer out there that we can make another call and not have a problem at all. As far as eliminating deer, we're not going to eliminate deer with 25 or 35 or probably even 50 or whatever. But I'm in favor of a call. Period.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, I have a brother that just moved over here from the other side of the state, and he purchased property right behind the Muskegon complex up there where they have the winter sports complex. And it's a large wooded area, and there's deer, there's turkey, and everything in there. And he's a smart planter. You know, if you grow the right stuff and plants and trees and everything else, the deer don't come around. His backyard is full of deer. If you look out there, you'll see it. But the thing is, his flowers are blooming. His yard is absolutely gorgeous. I should bring a picture and show you what it does. We had a graduation party, and he was talking to another member up on Grand Avenue up there, and he was talking about the deer call and this and that. And he says, "You guys are all crazy on how you do things around here." He says, "If you learn how to plant things and use the right things, the deer won't bother your plants." He does a very, very good time of, he has some exotic plants out there that the deer would normally eat. The turkey doesn't even come into his yard. He's got a pond out there. They come in, they drink the water, and they leave. They don't do anything else to his plants. They won't come into it. He's got woodpeckers. The neighbors' houses are all full of holes from them. But he says, you know, if you do it correctly, he's got a bird feeder for woodpeckers, which got the long board on it because the massive one, they need balance. He says, I feed them there, he says, and they don't come to my house, they don't come around. And that's what the neighbors are doing there now. They're doing the same thing. They're planting the right trees, they're planting the right flowers, and their deer population has now gone back into the woods and not coming back into their yards. I think just education of people using the right stuff, and that, I'm not in favor of just killing things just to kill. I mean, just because they're a nuisance. I mean, before we were around, they were here before us. So I like to live with nature. It doesn't bother me none. I have birds. I have cats that kill birds in my yard. Then I'd like to get rid of those. If we're going to do wildlife management, we need to take care of the wild cats we have in this town because they're killing all my cardinals. We have squirrels that destroy trees. There's a tree right next to the parking lot over on 3rd Street over here. You can see where they literally debarked the whole tree. It's dead. And then the tree next to it is the same thing. The squirrels have done it. I've had rabbits come in and eat, you name it, but do I go out and want to have them all? Should we eliminate squirrels? Should we eliminate or shoot rabbits? No, I mean, it's part of nature to me, so. The study or not, it's going to end up the same way it's going to end up, just like Denny says. He's in favor of the call. It's going to be probably a 3-2 vote when it comes again, and it doesn't make any bit of difference what you do. It doesn't matter, because all you're looking at right now is deer, 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 deer. You're not looking at wildlife management. You're looking at deer management. That's what we should call this, not wildlife management. Make sure we call something, call it out as it really is. This is a deer management, not wildlife. Because if we have wildlife, we have lots of wildlife in this town that we need to manage. There's turkeys here. I mean, go out there. They're destroying things. But we don't see turkey management. We don't see anything else. This is supposed to be a wildlife management. If it's a true wildlife management, we need to look at all wildlife, not necessarily just one specific animal. Let's take a good look at what our real wildlife is here.
All righty. Thanks.
Consent agendas.
On to the consent agenda. You want to read that, Nance?
To approve the special work session minutes and regular council meeting minutes of July 2nd, 2018. To approve the bills memo in the amount of $278,485.16. To cast a ballot for the following persons to serve as trustees of the Michigan Municipal League Workers' Compensation Fund for 4-year terms beginning October 1st, 2018. Christine Burns, Manager, Village of Spring Lake. Todd Campbell, Manager, City of Saline. And Lee Kilborn, Mayor, City of Auburn, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. To extend the existing Metro Act right-of-way permit issued to Michigan Bell Telephone Company doing business as AT&T Michigan, which expires December 31st, 2018 to December 31st, 2023, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. To approve the housing counselor contract for Lynn Balkema for neighborhood housing services and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. To approve the Grand Haven Aviation Association's 1940s swing dance party at the Grand Haven Municipal Airport to be held on Saturday, September 15th, 2018 from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. To approve an adjustment to the area to be occupied by the Flea on 7th on Sunday, July 29, to include closure of the portion of Centertown parking lot from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. that extends to Columbus Avenue. To approve a community service fund letter with the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation to establish a musical fountain audio project, sound investment fund to receive, hold, and disperse funds to preserve, restore, and care for the musical fountain sound system, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Anybody have questions on any of the items on this consent agenda?
None here?
No. All right, if none, we will vote.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Bruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes. And next item, new business.
To set MERS employer and employee contribution rates at Division 1, non-union employees at 14.7% for both employer and employee, Division 2, DPW employees at 14.92% for both employer and employee, and Division 21, public safety employees at 20.41% for employer and 17% for employees, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. I think that should be Division 11, not Division 2. I apologize.
All right, is there a motion?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Bonnie, you going to talk about this, or you are?
If you have questions, these are just the correct numbers. We got them a little bit off when this came to you before, but these are the corrected numbers, been verified by MERS and our finance department and Bonnie. And
this is a 50-50 split between employer and employee, except for the public safety, and that was negotiated in the contract that's specified at 17%. So, I mean, we've already been through this, at negotiations when we were with and they're doing 50-50 with everybody else like it's supposed to. So, I'm happy with it.
I'd like to see charts and spreadsheets.
Sorry?
I'd like to see charts and spreadsheets.
Oh, I would like to give you charts and spreadsheets. We have used the same calculation for the last 10 years, and that calculation has been firm and approved by MERS every single year. This year, there were a couple of missteps. They were mostly on my part, and we didn't get the confirmation from MERS until very late in June. And I had brought you the rates based on the calculations that we've been using at the end of April, thinking I'd get ahead of the game and could move on to the other open enrollment issues that we had with benefits. Unfortunately, that last week of June, MERS notified us that the rates that you approved in April did not meet their calculations. They've changed the calculation slightly. And when we conferred with them and took a look at the last actuarial report, we realized exactly where the issues were. We're confident now that these numbers are accurate. I've communicated with the SEIU union, and I will send individual letters out to that group explaining to them what happened. I'll also send individual letters to the non-union group explaining to them what happened. MERS only allows us to make adjustments with council agreement and on the first of a month. So we applied some of those rates on July 1st, and so the new agreements that we're asking you to sign will go into effect August 1st. We are not going to go back and adjust the individual rates and that kind of thing. We'll just take what we paid for July as what we paid for July, but we would like to make it accurate since our payments are normally a 12-month period, July through June. So we'll have accurate payments for 11 months. We're close enough on the others. It won't be a major issue as far as our funding is concerned, but we did want to make this accurate adjustment and bring it to you so that you knew it was happening, and then move forward effective August 1st.
So the people at home know, and we're discussing this, we know, are the rates higher than what we expected, or are your expectations lower the first time, so people at home know that we're bumping it has to be bumped up or bumped down?
No, I communicated to the employees, to the non-union employees, it would go from 13.31 to 15.04. They will now get a new rate at 14.7, so they should be thrilled. The Public Safety Department had agreed on a 17% max, so the issue is the city's issue, and our issue actually goes down just by a little teeny bit. The difficult issue is with the SEIU group, because we had quoted them 14.68, and it actually is 14.92. Now, last year they paid 15.11, so it's still a drop over what they were paying, but it is a 22.22 basis point increase between what they paid in July and what they'll pay in August. When I spoke with the business agent and the union president, they said, it's not a big deal, just fix it. So.
Very good, thank you.
I still don't like to be in that position.
Right.
I've been here a lot of years. I've brought you the correct numbers every single year. I apologize. The numbers were incorrect. We need to fix them going forward.
But again, it was MERS' fault, not your fault, so.
Well, I can throw almost anyone under the bus. I'll throw myself. It's my responsibility to bring you accurate numbers. The numbers I brought you in April are not the numbers we need to have going forward.
Well, the changes are, I mean, these are accurate now, you know, but the changes are not great. They are.
Right.
They're not going to make a huge difference in what somebody goes home with, so, but we got to have the right numbers, so.
Thank you.
All right.
You know, these are all actuarial assumptions and assessments, and
That
so
is correct.
what you're saying is that we went with the wrong guess before, and now we're going with a better guess.
There you go.
And
There
so
you
don't.
go. It is all based on actuarial assumption.
Right.
And we're aware of that. An actuarial assumption on numbers that we receive about 18 months ago.
So it's a fuzzy science.
Rates are based on the actuarial from December 31 of 2016.
Right.
And there were some adjustments, as recall a year ago, we split the Board of Light and Power non-union group out from the city non-union group, and in splitting those groups, that had some effect on it as well. So
Sure.
there were lots of little pieces happening, and these are the accurate numbers.
All right.
Well, I
Good to
just
go
have to
from
say,
here.
I talked with my team about integrity and character, and when you make a mistake, tell my guys, own it, apologize for it, and offer to fix it.
Yep.
And here, even in something that was not completely under your control, you owned it, you apologized for it, and you offered to fix it. That's integrity and character right there. So I'm glad you're on the team.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm assuming we're ready to vote.
Yeah.
Ruger,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes.
Michaela.
Yes. All right, on to report by city council. That's our last item. Short agenda. Who wants to start?
I can go for it. If I can read my handwriting, this will go quick. I've got three. I think two of them, at least, I'm kind of asking for some feedback from council, or if there's a consensus to do something different than what we've been doing. First one is regarding ad hoc committees. Over the last 9 months, there have been a number of ad hoc committees that have come up, and I've expressed my frustration with not being on some of them, and I don't need to belabor that. But I think what was expressed to me at the time that I expressed my frustration is that we do ad hoc committees on an alternating basis. It's not based on anything other than we alternate. And I would love to just forget about what's happened in the past between the different committees that we've had and how people have been placed on it. And I'm wondering if there is consensus among council to ask Pat to basically keep a list of 5 council members. Ad hoc committees are a revolving basis. It just goes down the list. And if your opportunity comes up and it's a committee that you want to sit on, you've got the first call to be on it or not. You can pass, you can take it, whatever it may be. But it seems to me that that'd be a pretty good process to go. I think that's what we try to do. I just love to add a little bit of, I don't know, a checklist that the city manager's in charge of maintaining. So I'll throw that out there. I don't need feedback right now. You guys can respond in your own comments if you'd like, but I would appreciate some sort of a change in that regard. And then I just wanted to follow up on Mike Verdine came with the request from the business owners and the two-way street. And I have to chuckle with Pat. We had a conversation. Once you start with part of the road, then suddenly the rest of the road becomes appealing to change. And I think in the initiative that we had to change from 5th Street to Harbor to be a two-way, I had thrown out, and I think there was a little bit of feedback or consensus, but I could be wrong, and I'm asking for input on that one as well, to look at the cost immediately for changing from 7th Street to 5th Street. I see that as a natural break. I imagine that going from 31 to 7th Street, given that MDOT's involved, is quite a significant chunk, and a lot of that has to take place at the state level. But at any rate, I'm just wondering if there's consensus to at least go to have Pat look into from 7th to 5th, and then if there is, even as Mike requested and as the business owners requested, to listen to our constituents and take a good look at 31 all the way to Harbor, being a two-way traffic on Columbus. And then the last third one I had here was actually regarding the BLP and burying the power lines. And I think I got feedback from you guys, and I'll be happy to follow up with the BLP. But it seemed that the property owners are very interested in burying the power lines and incurring a significant portion of that cost. The BLP has, in word, agreed to cover as much as a third, I believe it is. And I'd be very willing to follow up with them and see if we can get them to vote on that. If they'd be willing to do so, it'd be a great help. And then come back to City Council and say that, we've got a new deal. We've got an opportunity to do it. And it looks like a collaborative effort may take place. So I guess before I start that process personally, and on behalf of the citizens who've already come here, I'm just wondering if that's even going to get anywhere as far as City Council goes. We've all got valuable time, and I don't want to waste it if we're going to vote no anyway. But if there's a chance that, BLP antes up a third, the homeowners ante up maybe a third, and would the city be willing to do that as well? So those are my comments. They're kind of heavy, but there are lots of questions there too. Thanks.
Well, I'll comment on the Columbus Street. That's been a subject I've been interested in for years. And I've talked to Mike and others, and going from Harbor Drive to 5th Street is something we've done before, and we have a track record, and it's something relatively easy to implement. And I feel that we can show success or at least feasibility and see how it works, and how, if there are conflicts, if there are problems, and what obstacles may need to be taken out of the way. And so it's a logical first step, and it kind of recreates something we've done. And while I would like to know the costs of extending further, I think this is going to have to be phased in, not done all at once. I appreciate the interest and the excitement of the Centertown folks, and I think it's well-founded, and I've often said that I think one-way streets kill downtown areas. But I think that if we take it in a deliberate manner, build on our success, that it'll be an easier sell in general, and then we should know what it would cost. I don't know if the costs are going to be anywhere near as great as has been mentioned, but we don't know. And so I'd be a little hesitant to jump on board until I have a better idea of that. But I think in principle, it's a good idea. So I guess if you want to call that support, that's my support. It's a tentative support, but I think that in general, I've been in favor of this for some time. But I do think that what we've approved so far is a good step that we can build on. I did enjoy the 4th of July fireworks. Great show. And I enjoyed seeing the picture of Vester's drone picture of the stadium, jam-packed with people. It reminded me of Donald Trump's inaugural audience. Just jam-packed in there. But we got a lot of people crammed in there. That's a good thing. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Bob.
Commented on the making Cullen Street 2 ways from 7th. I'm okay with that, getting a cost estimate, what that would cost. I don't think I'm in favor of doing that until next time when we do our goal settings probably. But I don't mind getting a cost and see what that would be, and I think that's the next step we need to go, and then of course the last step would be the highway, and like Josh said, that's probably going to be a significant amount of money to get MDOT to probably close that medium off and make that go all the way to 31. So I think the next step is to go to 7th Street, and I'm okay with getting a cost estimate on that. The other thing is, we talked about water meters and the water rates and last time, and what we can do to, at least I did, to educate people and see if, to let them know maybe what 10,000 gallons of water would look like if they had a meter, and what 10,000 gallons would look like without a meter. And again, I'm in favor of financing that meter for 1 year. I see a lot more, quite a bit more brown grass this year than I seen last year even. It's been a dry period, but still, I think if we educate people and get them to understand how much money they could save if they would get a meter, I think maybe they would be more people watering their grass. So I'm in favor of still going ahead with that. That's all.
Thanks, Denny.
Thanks, Denny. Yesterday, I happened to pick up the Grand Rapids Free Press and thought I'd take a little interest in what they printed in there. It's all about roads and infrastructure in Michigan, and it says let's see, the American Society of Civil Engineers of Michigan section rated Michigan with a D+ for infrastructure systems. And it goes on a list of all of them. The best thing was solid waste with C+, and then aviation and navigation and wastewater was at a C. Bridges were at a C-, and same with energy. That's when I saw that, it kind of caught my attention. It says energy. It says systems generally meet current needs, but aging facilities and energy dependence on outside sources are the issues, is what our major engineers are telling us about. So that was pretty interesting, but it got down to drinking water. It got a D+, and I think, they didn't come to Grand Haven. Come on, we're probably rating it like a B+ to an A+. I mean, for drinking water comes in some of these things they have here. I think they should come here and take the average. It might bring the average up for Michigan that was pretty interesting to read that article on all these different things that we have going on in our state and how the legislators and we need to spend some money to get back in order. A good example is, they said that drinking water improvements are underfunded by $284 to $563 million every year. It's underfunded, and we know that for a fact is what we don't get here. We don't. So they should probably take a good look at what these engineers that did a study for us. So that's all I have to report.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Okay, I got a whole list of stuff, so I'm going to go through it quick here. On the stadium, Bob mentioned that, and we're looking from a drone picture, actually counting people. That stadium holds a lot more people than it was projected to hold, and that's an exciting. I had an inkling that might be the case because they were giving each person a whole lot more space than one person needs. So I think we appreciate how many people can pack in there when a big crowd comes. So I think that's good news for us. on other things, you know, we had a busload of people go to see the Tigers play last week. That was with a lot of employees, and that was a lot of fun. I went to, of course, the DDA meeting. The Loudoun Library is gathering people together to get input on, you know, purpose of the library as they move forward. Who do they want to be in future years? So I was able to participate in that, which is a lot of fun. Saturday I went to the Pixar show at the Musical Fountain, and you know, it's to see the crowd of people there, and to see the expertise of what happens with that fountain is amazing. And that the helix that they designed, I know they did the helix and the wave, and the helix, you know, not that I don't like the wave because that's cool, but that helix is really impressive. So appreciate the folks, GVSU folks that put that together, because it adds a lot to the show, and it's a lot of fun. Also, I went to the open house at the airport on Saturday, just thinking of going down there and chatting with people. Ended up getting an air tour of Grand Haven, so I felt pretty fortunate about that. And Grand Haven looks as cool from the air as it does from the ground. And what a great time, and appreciate being taken up and going for a ride up there. Also met the skydiving folks. Not quite ready to sign up for that, but they tell me that Sky has jumped 10,000 times. So if you want to go skydiving with somebody that knows what they're doing, he's the man to do it for you. He also said Grand Haven he finds a lot more people that want to try that in Grand Haven. He appreciates people that live here. They're willing to take a chance on stuff. So that may be good. Yeah, that's a good thing. Other thing I want to plug, WGHN is with the City Farmer and myself, program called Everyday, and that's not a program, it's a contest called Everyday Heroes. If we want to accentuate good news around town, not just the negative. So if you know of somebody that does, you know, a good thing for people, a good deed, or they volunteer, just some good news around Grand Haven, check out the WGHN website, tell you where to send your information, and we'll be awarding those folks that do good things and add good news to our community. So check that out. If I want to comment on Columbus, I think the first question on Columbus was, it was from 7th to the highway was the first request, which would be definitely the most expensive part. And so I am not opposed to looking at extending the 2 ways on Columbus, but I think, you know, we haven't even implemented the first section yet, so I think all in good time we can look at as we have time as to what the cost would be at the railroad track, and also now the next section. So, and as the closer you get to 31, the more complicated and more expensive it becomes. As far as the BLP, and we had a meeting with them today, and I think it was very productive about the future of snowmelt and the future of local production. And also was brought up about the Harbor Drive and putting the conduit in there. And the point is that their board needs to approve that. As far as appointments are concerned, I was the one that had asked Pat to just kind of see if we knew who had been on what committees. And I think it was, pretty evenly spread around. And I had even thought, you know, is there a better way to do this? But to say it's totally by who has served last, that kind of takes the prerogative out of the mayor's hands, and it's not just for me, it's for any future mayor, that I don't want to tie their hands. So I think we just need to be cognizant of, you know, who's served and what's available, and try as best we can to be fair. But as far as, so, you know, Pat, keep track of, you know, who's been where, who's served in what capacity. I think that's a good thing, and try to keep it as fair as possible. And other than that, I think I'll hand it off to Pat for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Your Honor. First thing, there we go. You know, just like as Josh mentioned, you know, if we just had a rotation where we could track who was most recently appointed to something, And I don't know if that would be in the event of multiple people being interested, then you would defer. I mean, it's a great problem to have. I don't think my colleagues have this problem. What's more common is you have a city council that says, you know, I don't want to do it, but we're blessed to have 5 city council members who are active and engaged and want to serve on these things. So this was just a quick, Jerry and I were talking and we wrote down some of the things that, from memory, what we could remember that people had served on, and we just thought we'd get a list and we could start now going forward, and only keep track of those if, so often something comes up and the mayor says, would anybody like to serve on that? And one person's hand goes up. Or sometimes nobody's hand goes up and everybody looks at each other and somebody gets kind of maybe convinced by their colleagues it should be you, and they volunteer and it's okay. I mean, I can only remember twice that there has been more than one person interested in a particular appointment, and those have both been in the last year. Other than that, it seems like it's always just sort of shaken out and everybody's been okay with it. So any method that you prefer, we can use. We can track it. We can have the mayor make appointments. We can have you vote on it. We can do drawing straws. The one way we used to do it for a spell was whoever spoke up first, sort of dibs, shotgun, and you get it. So however you guys want to do it, but this was only an effort to try to track things that people have been appointed to. And I recognize that these are not all ad hoc committees. Some are appointments to serve on particular boards that we're required to have an appointee for that. I was just making an effort just to try to put everything down on paper so we know who's been on what, in recent months. That's the only reason I listed these in the weekly report.
Well, and I mentioned to you also that, these are not the ad hoc committees. The MPO, I serve on the MPO board on behalf of Harbor Transit, not on behalf of the city. I serve on Harbor Transit Board by appointment by council, but it's a permanent standing management committee for Harbor Transit. So, I mean, lumping that in with everything else kind of distorts it. And as I talked to Jerry a little bit offline, and I commented that it kind of got turned into a contest to see who could volunteer first, and I don't think that's necessarily the best way to find people. You may not match up the right person with the right job that way. And with the BLP thing, I had jumped in the very earliest I could at the joint meeting and said, yeah, I want to do this. But then Jerry's response was that, well, it should have been at this meeting, and Mike spoke first. And well, okay, if that's the way it is, then let's just be consistent about it. I think that to some degree, and it goes back to, I think there's always going to be some mayor's discretion here. I guess that's why she gets the big bucks, is that you try to match the right people with the right appointment. I think Josh and I both are very disappointed not to be on the Affordable Housing Committee because we brought that forward, and that seemed like a logical appointment. I enjoyed being on the short-term rental committee. I think we did good work and we came up with a good result, and it wasn't what I set out to do, nor was it what Josh set out to do, but we came up with something that worked broadly. So I think if you get the right people on the right boards, it can work out well. If you just take people because it's their turn, that may or may not be a good match, and I think there's always going to be people disappointed. As you say, all of us like to be involved. All of us like to put our fingerprints on this stuff. That's why we're here. We're not here just to sit. So I would like to be on more of these, but I do want you to be consistent about, if you're keeping score on who's been on what committee, let's be consistent how we define that and when it happened. And there's like 3 different infrastructure committees that have been involved. You lump them together like there's just one. I mean, there was the Red Ribbon Committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, and then the Financing Committee. And you might want to distinguish between those and when they happened and how long ago some of these were. And otherwise, I think that, I don't want people to miss a chance to be on a committee because this list was ill-defined or outdated or whatever. But whatever you do, be consistent. And if you're just going to make it the choice of the mayor based on who she thinks is best suited, then I guess that's part of the job.
Well, I think that was part of the issue. We were trying to remember who had been on what, and I know that there's various different infrastructure committees and who was on one which section of it was kind of difficult to try to recall. So if you want to, and as far as that's concerned, like the Audit Review Committee is something that the mayor is on, as well as the DDA board, as well as the Brownfield board. And Mike's on the Brownfield board, plus, so some of it is by your position. Others of it are volunteers. Some of them are short-term, some of them are long-term. So there's a variety of ways to do it. There's a variety of solutions. And no matter what, somebody is going to be disappointed, and no matter what happens. So I guess the best thing is to do the best we can going forward, and because you can't change what's already happened. So.
Yeah, and thanks for the feedback too, and didn't realize you had this prep to go up there either, Pat. But I want to echo what Bob said. As long as it's consistent, then I'm much more in favor of that than what we've been doing thus far, at least as it would appear. And then I want to say that the way that the Affordable Housing Committee worked out, and this would go against what I had just suggested, so I see the value in a different format, but again, as long as it's consistent. But with the affordable housing, that was perfect because Bob and I came at, excuse me, not affordable housing, short-term rentals. Bob and I both came at that from opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think there was significant value to having two people at polar opposite ends of that one and coming together in the middle and finding a way through. It's when it's lopsided in paradigm that I get very concerned, which is where I want to go to a more consistent and judicious process. So anyway, I just wanted to say thanks, Bob, for those
Well,
thoughts.
and as far as that affordable housing thing was, so since you and Bob had both been on both the short-term rentals and infrastructure, and so, well, I shouldn't say, because Bob said he wasn't on that infrastructure committee. That, right, but I guess in my thinking, the next committee that came along spread the wealth around to other people that wanted to volunteer for it, but anyway, be that as it may, we will go forward and deal with the next committee as it comes up.
Okay, so I do, Bob's correct. He serves on the MPO by virtue of his Harbor Transit, so that really shouldn't be under Bob as far as a council appointment. That's from the Harbor Transit Board. He's been appointed to serve on the MPO. And I'll add DDA and Brownfield to Jerry's list, just so we've got a record of what appointments have been made, whether they're ad hoc or other, and we'll just try to have that list in case it becomes an issue that, if I said, well, I'm only on one and you're on 6, could I be on this one? But again, that's so rare that that's become an issue. And it does seem the mayor has broad appointive powers in other areas that are clear. Mayor appoints, council confirms. So relying on the mayor to say, well, this is a committee on school transportation, and she might decide Denny has a special knowledge about that others lack, and she might appoint Denny, and nobody would probably have an issue. If it was a panel on the condition of our vehicles in our fleet, she might ask Mike, since he's got expertise in car body shop work. So I'll just keep this list, and rather than come forward with a real formal, because I think Jerry and I were talking, we were kind of agonizing over what a policy might look like and where we'd put the whereases, and I think maybe we're overthinking it, when it hasn't been a problem consistently, and we'll just kind of keep track and move forward that way.
Like on the Brownfield, for me, I was appointed by the council to be on there, so it's, it's like any other citizen that would came in and applied for that job. It wasn't where I was the mayor and then I was part of like she is with the DDA, which is totally different. Because when John Harrell was there, he's still on the Brownfield yet, and even after he's no longer on council, so it's a different.
You don't think I should
that's a different kind of an appointment, than what we do here is we volunteer to go on these special ad hoc committees, and the Brownfield is not an ad hoc committee; it's an actual committee that I'm even if I'm not on the council, I'm still obligated for so many years afterwards to still be there yet.
I think what Mike has said with the ad hoc committees makes,
Yeah.
you know, I'm on the Main Street Business and Retention Committee, which is underneath the DDA, but that's not up there, and I don't think it should be up there. I think I'm
Yeah.
looking specifically at ad hoc committees.
Ad hoc committees
I
only.
think that,
Yeah.
those tend to be the ones that we,
We want, everybody wants, you know, we all put our hands up.
Yeah, like an MPO is not a.
And I have to agree, you know, we have a list of things that we've been on. I've been on quite a few different ones through the years I've been here, since I've been here long. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't fit some of those categories. Josh has better expertise, and I think the mayor can use good judgment, and just, I've only had a couple of instances lately, so it's a little hiccup, who knows? I trust it over the 15 years now I've been here. I've trusted the past mayor and this mayor we have now. I trust their judgment on moving along and moving the town forward. And I've seen great improvements in every category that we've been put into. So I think it's good.
Yeah.
Just keep tabs.
Good. Purchasing limits. We had a discussion at your last meeting about purchasing limits, and you can see, hopefully you can figure out how those are supposed to line up. Currently, the 3 competitive quotes submitted to City Council is $5,000. I had proposed $20,000. There was a couple council members said they were okay with $20,000. A couple others said they were okay with $10,000. Thought you split the difference at $15,000. Either make everybody happy or make nobody happy. We'll see. So that's what I tried to do. You know, like the local vendor variance. You know, I've suggested 5%. A couple were okay with that. A couple were okay staying at 3. Well, you split the difference at 4%. So I intend to put these together and hopefully gain consensus at your next meeting, and there'll be an ordinance recommended, and we'll see if it gets 5-0 or 4-1 or even a majority. And I'll take my licking and keep on ticking if I have to go back and try it a different way. And then finally on stadium usage, you know, we're working our way into that. Thus far, it seems like it's very successful. The stadium is getting great reviews. We're learning to crawl with how we're using it and coming up with, and we're going to have a further baptism as we work through the Coast Guard Festival. They're going to be setting up the plastic chairs out there. I understand they're going to have, I think 1,400 chairs for a couple of events, and then they're going to do 2,200 chairs. They're going to put them up and take them down each night. So if anybody wants a workout, come on down before or after the event, and you can help either set chairs out or collect them. The other users of the space, as we're looking at that, we've got a number for what people would pay to use the space. So if it's an event that somebody's having that's open to the public and it's free and there's no alcohol, I don't think there'd be any reason to have to come back to City Council for permission to use the stadium. If it's open to the public, it's free, and there's no alcohol. By extension, if it's not open to the public, it should come back to City Council. If it's not free, it should come to City Council. And if there's alcohol, it should come to City Council. So those are the 3 for now. You know, we'll probably have a clearer policy, but for now, as I'm getting asked by people for certain types of usage, and I have to decide, does it have to go to City Council or not, those will be the 3 standards that I use. Open to the public, charging, and alcohol. Those will come to City Council. And if you think one happens that should have come to City Council, just let me know, and I can continue to refine how we're doing that. But like I said, so far our dream that organic use would work appears to be accurate. You know, it does seem to be working down there. People are behaving themselves and sitting down nicely. And that picture of Esther got of the worship on the waterfront a week ago yesterday was really spectacular to see the way people are sitting, and they're staying out of the aisles. So there's adequate ingress and egress for emergency personnel, and you know, we fit over 3,000 people in that space, which is really incredible. So,
if there's organized activity like that, do we have to worry about liability?
There's what now? If there's
an organized activity down there, even though it includes the public, and they're not charging for it, do we have to worry about liability?
Yes, they still have to apply to use it, and we would ask them for a copy of their insurance certification.
all right,
Just won't
okay,
come,
all right,
doesn't,
okay.
and those things doesn't have to come to us then.
Right, okay, that's fine. I
The
just
staff can make a
threw
decision.
that out there, just like, why not?
Like, I don't think Worship on the Waterfront comes here each year because it's open to the public and it's free.
Right.
And it's a known thing, so again, I was, kind of had a couple people ask about, can we use it for this or that, and I was trying to decide what goes to council, and I was starting to write up big, complicated policies and memos, and I thought, well, why not just keep it simple? If it's one of those three things, I'll bring it to council. If not, we'll do it as staff, and we'll apply the proper fees, and if you decide you need to have more involvement in scheduling, we can always change it.
So if it's an exclusive use but not one of those three, you'll still collect fees and you'll still be, but it would still be open to the public. Now, if it's an exclusive use, it's not really open to the public, is it?
I think if they're charging admission, I would bring that to city council.
Right. If there's something was going on there and they didn't care who came and sat down, then it's really no different from any other park where people have free and casual access to it.
Right.
In which case, that's exactly what a park should do anyway. I think that's why we build parks, so that people can use them at will. So
Now, if somebody came along and said, we want to use Central Park and we want to shut down the whole park,
that's an exclusive use.
yeah, the chamber does it during Coast Guard, but you approve that as part of the overall Coast Guard
Right.
festival.
So that does get a council approval.
Yeah.
I think, to me, the big difference here is the exclusive use is the general public kept out or must pay to get in. I mean, you've already mentioned if they charge, but if anybody can come in and just sit down for whatever it is that's going on, I don't have a problem with. It's more of a casual use of a park.
Yeah, and if they block it off and keep the public out, I would bring that to city council for approval.
I would think you should.
Okay, that's all I have tonight.
All right. So, general business, call the audience. I didn't think anybody was going to respond. So in that case, we need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Did I hear second? And then we need to vote.
Denny and Bob?
Denny and Bob.
Denny and Bob were on that.
Yep.
Denny moved it.
I think Bob seconded. No, that went really quick.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Krueger?
Yes.
Taylor?
All right, thank you much.